Did golf inspire modern architecture? Coming up on Architecture Codex.
Architecture Codex. If you want to see more, subscribe.
If you ask me, the three greatest modern houses are Falling Water, the Farnsworth House, and Villa Savoye. And yes, we can debate that. Do so in the comments below. Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright in 1937 is certainly the most famous, but its design is so integral to the site that it does not have a lot of copies. You could argue that the Roby House, designed by Wright in 1910, had more impact on early modern design. But ask the general public and they will not recognize the Roby House. Yet they will likely know Falling Water, which we covered in Architecture Codex video number 24. The Farnsworth House by Mies van der Rohe in 1951 probably influenced more mid-century architects than any other building by showing the extent that glass could be used in residential projects. Some architect historians erroneously attribute that to Philip Johnson's glass house, but that was Johnson ripping off Mies's design. And so I will not grant Johnson that honor. We covered the glass house in Architecture Codex video number 54, and we paid due homage to Mies's Farnsworth House in Architecture Codex video number 77. But before them, there was Villa Savoye by Le Corbusier, which started construction in 1928. I am a bit surprised that I had not already done a video on Villa Savoye, so now I'm doing one. It was designed to be the weekend house for Pierre and Eugenie Savoye. There was an emerging modern lifestyle of rich people playing golf at clubs, and that was Pierre's interest. So he only asked that the house have a place for his golf clubs, and he left everything else to his wife. For a country retreat, Poissy, the location of Villa Savoye, was near the golf course and less than an hour's drive from Paris. Eugenie hired Le Corbusier because she liked a modern kitchen renovation he had done. Her program elements were simple: a modern kitchen, a large pantry, electrical outlets, room for a washing machine, a big living room with a fireplace, rooms for servants, chauffeurs, her son, and some guests. But she left the entire style of the house up to Le Corbusier. The Savoyes liked Le Corbusier's first design, but they did not like the price. So he redesigned the house to meet their budget, but they did not like the design. So they said to him, "Give us the first design, but at the same price as the second design." Now, no architect has that kind of magic, and so that attitude kind of dooms a project from the beginning. And while this project was very successful, there were some technical problems, probably owing to the fact he was trying to economize on the budget. The main complaint was the roofs leaked. There were problems with the installation, and gobs of bituminous waterproofing did not solve them. In 1928, under laboratory conditions, flat roofs actually performed pretty well. But in the field, where they would be installed by French workmen, whose lunch may consist of a baguette, a half a kilo of brie, and a liter of wine, there would be installation issues, and that would aggravate the problems. There were some contentious exchanges, but those seemed to diminish over time, particularly as Pierre's interest in golf waned. And the house was lived in for many years by the couple, and they appreciated its design. That all ended when the Germans took over France and turned the house into a war depot. But despite the exchanges, Le Corbusier and the Savoyes remained friends for many years. The design remained hugely influential, although you might argue it was copied more by corporate office parks than houses. It certainly brought Le Corbusier international acclaim. But this was the culmination of an overall effort by Le Corbusier to reinvent himself and eventually reinvent architecture. For the first couple of decades of the 20th century, Swiss architect Charles-Édouard Jeanneret was doing traditional architecture. But in 1920, he renamed himself Le Corbusier, which was sort of a twist on his grandfather's name, meaning the crow. This fulfilled Le Corbusier's interest in being a little bit of an enigma. Le Corbusier made sense as a name because the architect, formerly known as Charles Edouard Jeanneret, was just too long. And so after reinventing himself, he reinvented architecture with his 1923 book, Towards a New Architecture. This book outlined the premises on which he would base his designs from that point on. Among the things about which he wrote was how the automobile was a machine that was prototypical of the 20th century because it was more about engineering than style. And he decided that a house should be designed as a machine for living. He also outlined his 5 points of architecture, and Villa Savoye fulfills all 5. The first is about floating. Savoye is elevated on thin, steel-reinforced concrete columns. No classical stone columns, as they are much wider and take up too much space. Le Corbusier liked keeping the ground level free of construction so people can see the world unfettered by buildings. The thin posts, the pilotis, do allow the chauffeur to drive under the building, drop off the guests, and retreat. But there is also a garage on the ground floor. And as part of the house as a machine, the curve of the ground floor was based on the turning radius of their voisin, a classic automobile. The second point was the flat roof, which allowed for more useful space for the occupants. In a twist on what is inside and outside, to get to the roof garden of Villa Savoye, you exited the building on the second floor, directly to the outside, and up a ramp to the roof. The third point was about the open plan. Free-flowing spaces where the family lived on what we might call the second floor, elevated on the pilotis. Europeans often refer to this as the piano nobile, the first floor above the ground. That is because, historically, animals and carriages might occupy the ground floor. While the bedrooms and bath have privacy, the other living spaces flow into each other, and even outside in an interior elevated courtyard. The fourth point is the free facade. When the exterior walls are not load-bearing, then the windows can take any form, or the wall can be of any material. All the exterior structure is held up by the same pilotis, those thin columns, that go through the main floor. And the fifth point of architecture is the open perimeter, a ribbon of windows adding to the lightness of the appearance, but also allowing streams of light everywhere on the inside. This is made possible by his fourth point, the free facade. The window is no longer a puny penetration in the thick load-bearing walls. Instead, glass panes, wall to wall, allow light in the building in ways not previously done. The whiteness also defines the house as being of no known material. It does not show its cut stone, its brick, its wood siding, or its half-timber construction with stucco filled in. Its substance is unknown, and therefore, as a design, it is intellectualized. Non-materiality became the hallmark of Bauhaus design, and eventually the late 20th century group of 5 architects known as the New York Whites. Richard Meyer's White Long Island homes are perhaps the most popular works from this group. Le Corbusier was a scoundrel of sorts, and later on in his life he admitted that this kind of behavior was a bit affected, as he felt it promoted him as an avant-garde architect. While he was married to just one woman, the fashion model Yvonne Gallis, Le Corbusier was famously unfaithful, including a week-long tryst with Josephine Baker on a cruise ship from Buenos Aires to France that was covered in all the papers. And while the influential Philip Johnson called Le Corbusier mean, that did not stop Johnson from copying him when he could, including wearing the same kind of glasses. For all its machine-like qualities, Villa Savoye is not a cold machine building. Le Corbusier himself said, quote, "Architecture only exists where there is poetic emotion," end quote. And then he added, "Otherwise it's just engineering." You can see the poetry in Villa Savoye, how all the parts work together for that unified vision, and how all the materials work together to support that vision. It is not an epic poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, which might support another kind of building, perhaps a ponderous but craftily detailed Richardsonian edifice. Rather, it is poetry that is simple and modern, perhaps something by E. E. Cummings. I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture Codex.